Welcome back to another episode. What is this? Episode
Five.
five?
Yep.
Five of the Missing Triggers podcast. As you know, in our last episode, we talked about no weekends off, and you know what? We decided to give ourselves a weekend or so off. Because that we
Well, she
needed it.
budgeted to do it, so
Yeah. So if they won't do it, we're gonna do it. But how have you been, Sebastian? It's been like a week or so since we've talked, and we a lot of things have happened.
a
Somewhat.
lot of things happened. Um, Found out I was moving, so was not able to make it to Vegas because of life. Um, Last minute, so it worked out where I hadn't booked the flight yet. But it was unfortunate because I didn't get to be with the team. But the team did do very well, and they actually did make it to the top four.
They
Slipped
did.
in
They
at
did.
fourth or third place
They got
after the
third
whole
place.
shenanigans. hmm
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty neat. It's also really weird to not be able to get to go to an event.
Yeah.
I think this was the first event you and I didn't go to.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
kind of upset that my calling track record isn't 100% attendance anymore.
uh,
I was
I
pretty proud of
feel
that,
that.
but yeah,
Sometimes life throws you curveballs, and we kind of got to adjust the game plan. And we're working on going into Uprising pre-release this coming up weekend, and that I've given myself a little bit of time to kind of be away from the game as far as playing goes, just to be ready for this because I've heard nothing but good things about Uprising in a limited format.
yeah,
Um,
dude, it's crazy. I've been watching all the DM Armada, Red Zone Rogues videos about how they got to experience more Uprising limited in draft because they weren't in the main event, I believe, because they were casting and stuff like that. So they got to play in some extra side event tournaments for Uprising, and you know, who knew if you print Arcane Barrier in a set that does arcane damage, it feels better. If you
yeah, for real.
print ways to deal with arcane for every set, yeah. So I feel like that's been the main thing I've liked that people have said, like Icelander just doesn't feel like overpowered or anything, like a little bit underrated, but not overpowered with the arcane damage, because we all know with Briar, it was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, apparently now, from what when Nam and Alex got back, they're saying that Fi is kind of taking the reins as the
hmm
Briar of the set for
Yeah.
sealed. For sealed, that is. But
It makes sense to me because you have the generic pool that works really well with things like Scar for Scar and like, you know, red attacks, and then you have the ninja pool and then the whole draconic pools. So you have a lot of stuff that you can work with. And I think Dromai needs a few specific cards. That red one cost card that makes an ash and then transforms up to 3 ashes into the little dragons, the Aether Ashwings.
is that
Apparently, you do
Rake
need
the
the.
Embers?
I think so. Apparently, you do need like some of those to have a viable Dromai deck, from what I'm hearing, because that is like the most powerful card. And
I'm
then,
actually
of
gonna
course,
look
with
that up. Let's see.
I'm
Um,
sure
yeah,
it would make sense
that's
that with Icelander, that if you don't, it's kind of, I feel like it's going to be like the Oldham of this set, where it's like if you have the good blue pool, then go ahead and play it. But if you look at your pool and you're like, you know what, there's not a lot of ice cards that are blue here, or there's not a lot of good spells in my pool, so I'm just gonna play Dromai or Fi.
yeah. Ed ended up going first off. Shout out to Ed for filling in for Sebastian for Vegas. Um, Probably a very good replacement for you. Honestly, it kind of showed
Yeah.
that the team still did very well, which is freaking insane. So they ended up getting like we said, top four, losing in top four. But Ed in the world premiere event played Icelander and went 6-0 and got himself a box.
That
Um,
was pretty cool.
from what Nam was telling me, he had quite a few of the ice bolts
Yeah.
where he can just come at you for a crap ton of arcane. and a lot of people just couldn't do much about it, and so
Yeah.
that's what he was doing, was a lot of that. So it seems like if you get a decent amount of blues, and then also that ice bolt card, which if I'm not mistaken, just hits you for 5. The red one hits you for 5, obviously yellow 4, and then the blue 3.
Yeah.
So and it costs 2, and it blocks for 3, which it's kind of important. So I would assume that card's probably, if you are wanting to build Icelander like in a draft setting, you might want to prioritize that card.
I would imagine the 1 for 4 ice card, Aether Bolt or something like that, or I believe that's it. Whatever these cards' names are, but the 1 for 4 that deals 4 damage probably is really good because for 1 blue you can also activate the staff and deal 6 damage on 1 turn, which we all know arcane damage is way harder to deal with than regular damage.
For sure. For sure. Um, let's see. Let's talk about how they did in Vegas, because I feel like a lot of people want more of these types of tournaments, right?
Yeah, and that's why I was so down about missing out on it because like I feel like that team aspect is just so cool, and just imagine if they had a CC tournament like this, like
Which
you have a team.
they might do that in the
Yeah.
future, you know?
Then you have the question of, do you want to do a, CC tournament where it's like, or maybe a unified CC tournament where you can't share a card pool and add another layer to that format where, some crazy deck. Because one of the biggest things we saw was the first seeds team that had Prism in the middle. That was Michael Fang's Yanji, and the two Yanji's teams, and I thought that was wild that they put the Prism in the middle, metagaming the metagame because if
Mm-hmm.
we if we go by standard like Magic, right, it's like okay, put the aggro deck, put the best player on the aggro deck in the middle so they can get done with their game fast, and then help the other two people who are on the control in the mid range deck to their left and their right.
Yeah.
That's the standard thinking. So everyone said, okay, I'm just going to put Oldhim in the middle because everyone's going to put the aggro deck in the middle. And then they metagame the metagame and just put Prism in the middle because they're like, everyone's going to put Oldhim in the middle.
Because why the fuck
Uh,
not at this point, right?
why not? And
Yeah. Michael Fang did
poor
really
Alex,
well with it, apparently.
yeah, and poor Alex had to play what 6 Oldhims
Something like
throughout the
that.
tournament. Pretty
Something like that.
wild.
They're crazy for that, but I mean, it got him there at the end. I think Alex ended up. If everybody didn't know, their seat composition was Ed was playing Bravo. Again, this is Blitz, Team Blitz event. Ed was playing Bravo. I want to say he was one of the only Bravos up there.
Yeah.
And then Alex was on Briar, and then of course Nam was on Oldham. That's the only thing that man knows how to play is Guardian. But apparently, I don't know about Ed's record, but I know Alex ended up going like 7-3-1 altogether. I think with one non-finish, and then Nam ended up going 10-2. But I'm not entirely sure how Ed did in his in his record. But they finished off I think 9-2-1, right? And that what
Yeah.
and how that works? Yeah, nine
Yep.
two one, and they ended up squeaking in at like 4th place, which is or 3rd place, excuse me, which is pretty fucking cool to say the least. I'm
Yep.
happy for Alex. Alex deserved it, honestly.
He did. And I think Ed did too because that man's been putting up consistent numbers. His elo's crazy. Uh,
He's like top
and
13, I think, and he's like 13th in Elo right now, right?
yeah, in
Yeah.
classic constructed elo. I mean, the man's been going crazy at the game. I think he had a good nationals, right? And then he had a good indie and then a good pro tour run. It's just like he deserved to get that top. Alex deserved to get that top. I guess Nom needed an ego boost because
He
he
did,
was getting
for
dry. All
sure.
right.
He was a little dry, but he got there. I mean, he played very well this weekend,
Yep.
which is pretty awesome. So yeah, it looks like Ed is 13th for Elo, which is pretty awesome. Um but yeah, so I mean, if you guys don't know anything about Ed, he had an insane Indianapolis tournament. He beat Michael Hamilton, Tarek Patel, Matt Rogers, and somebody else. I can't remember off the top of my head. He beat like all of said best players in the game, which was
Yeah.
crazy to even think about. So I'm happy to see that he finally pushed through and got one too, because I want to say on Starva that weekend he ended up like X4, but he played like 2 really close Prism games or something like that and just couldn't edge out one of them to get the top 8. So glad that he ended up getting there. Like we said, Alex really needed it. He's been so close. He had a really good indie tournament too, or indie weekend, and he's kind of piggybacked off that weekend. I'm happy to see that he got himself a PTI as well. So
Exactly.
so you know,
So crazy thing is that means 3 of the card guys are guaranteed for Worlds right now, which I think is pretty insane.
3 being guaranteed is pretty cool, to say the least. But we got to get the rest of us there, you know. Somehow,
Exactly.
maybe at Nats we'll just sweep Nats. Fuck it, why not?
And then Pro Tour, Pro Tour 2.
Oh,
Let's go.
I can't wait for you guys to be able to play in the Pro Tour and have a good time that weekend. That's gonna be pretty neat,
Oh, it is.
especially vacation esque and whatnot. So, um, going forth with like the meta for Uprising, where do you think these heroes stand as far as constructed goes? Now that we don't have Chain and we don't have Starvo and Prism's at like 800 points almost or something like that.
So, where I think the meta's gonna go, right? I think week 1, Prism is probably gonna win a lot of tournaments just because while the other decks are trying to figure out their ratios and their their list. I mean, this happens in all card games where when the new decks come out, the old deck that was considered the best deck from the last format just comes and sweeps the first week, right?
Uh
Um,
huh.
and we don't have Starvo, we don't have Chain, so the third best deck in that format was Prism
Yep.
or Kano or something like that. So yeah, you have Prism there, and I think she's going to do well, which I hope she gets Living Legend out soon. I wonder if they actually printed the Illusionist in Uprising, because maybe they thought Prism would get Living Legend out um by this time.
That's
That's
a
something that I thought about.
hmm. Yeah, that's possible for sure.
Because like she was one win away from getting there. So it would have been kind of timely that they add in one more Illusionist just to keep that card pool going. But yeah, I think Prism's gonna do well. I think Oldham's gonna do well. And I think the 3 new heroes are gonna do well. What I don't know is about every other hero besides the 2 I just mentioned from the old sets, because I guess Kano too. Kano I would say is gonna do pretty well in the new format to a certain
Sure.
extent. But right now I think the game has become something where you have to play like to an extreme. Like you have to play your defense to an extreme, or now with Icelander you're gonna have to like be mindful of resources, and with Fi, like I feel like Fi just pushes out pretty much every other aggro deck, right?
It's
To an
possible.
extent,
It's possible that it can.
because
Um, I'm not sure.
he just has a lot of good hit effects that say, if you don't block this, blow up the arsenal, or just like, if I get to this many chain links, I'm gonna do this. So in a
I
race
think
against Briar,
I think that's like the main focal point that I like for Fi. Like, let's look at Katsu for example.
yeah,
Katsu presents a lot of on hit effects,
exactly.
whereas Fi doesn't necessarily rely on hit effects. And you can just continuously grow that chain link and just
Hmm.
get as you can threaten mask twice in a turn. You can hit chain link 4 and threaten so many different things. You have the card called Liquefy that can, if I'm not mistaken, kill Rampart, which is very key to the ninja decks. So I, crazy to think about, but I do think Fi is probably the best aggro deck in the format. Off of just initial intel and
Yeah,
card pool and stuff. So um I've got a pretty neat list I'm working on that I'm probably gonna play at the start of RTN season. We're gonna see what happens with, but I do feel like it'll be the aggro deck of the format. But again, I think it destroys Prism, but again, Guardian's still gonna be a problem because you don't want to block, and if they hit you with an Oakenold, you're probably like fuck, you know,
Yeah.
or if you get hit with like a Spinal Crush, you're like fuck, or whatever else. So
And this is something we're gonna have to test, but I feel like we're gonna be in an interesting format where you have like kind of the Guardians to beat out the aggro and maybe the Wizards, and then the Illusionist kind of in there too, and then the Wizards to prey on the aggro decks because, you know, Kano's gonna thrive. I think against Fi for sure, Briar for sure. Icelander's gonna thrive against those two decks, and then if Dromai leans heavy on the reds, which you have to because of the hero ability that says if you pitched red, give your dragons go again. So you're gonna
mhm.
have to, lean on your reds. Um, to some extent, you're gonna be in this decision tree where it's like, okay, I'm 5 arcane damage is coming in, or do I have a turn? And then Icelander presents a weird thing where it's like, not only am I disrupting your turn, I'm also throwing damage at you, which is also disrupting your turn because, you know, the chip damage starts as chip damage, 3 damage here, 5 damage here, 6 damage
Adds up.
here. It adds up.
It adds
It
up real
definitely
quick
adds
when
up.
you're not really thinking about it.
Exactly. So I think the aggro decks are going to have probably, 4 or 5 turns, which, might be enough. But if Icelander is just throwing cards that say, make 3 frostbites on my turn, or the power in Icelander, I think is going to be that new headpiece. Because the new headpiece literally says, okay, even if my hand is complete garbage and I can't do anything with it, at least I can guarantee 1 card out of your hand. Which
Yeah.
means I've brought your 5 card hand down to a 4 card hand, or I brought your 4 card hand down to a 3 card hand, which is like
Yep.
in a game of grinding and tempo, that is crazy than equipment
Guaranteed. You just get
guarantee.
guaranteed value every single turn.
Yeah, and then if you're playing the Kraken's Aether Vein and they have a heavy red hand, you go, all right, pitch one or discard one. If they want to keep their blue and they discard one, you're like, all right, poke you for one. If it hits, I draw. And then they're like, I see how this is going. So then you put them on always have the blue, and it's just gonna. I feel like that deck is just gonna be the best grindy tempo deck, and I think it's gonna struggle in beating the Guardians maybe. But I think that the fact that you have the ability to play around with Crucible of Aetherweave, the Waning Moon, and the Kraken's Aether Vein, you're gonna find some kind of combination in that deck where you can figure out a line of play to chip in through the Guardians and find some kind of combo. Just from looking at Icelander as a whole, it's kind of weird because like Icelander, I realize she's very good, but unlike Kano, there's not that crazy combo for the Guardians. You know how like Kano is not bound by the 4 card, 5 card hand. Kano
Yeah.
can hit a tome off the top, keep going, hit another tome off the top, or set up some kind of like lesson in lava into some kind of crazy combo, blazing aether at the end of it to deal 20 damage. But Icelander doesn't have Blazing Aether. It doesn't have Lesson in Lava to search things, and you only can instant speed play out blue cards. So it's like if I crack Stormstriders for Aether Wildfire, I can play out a blue on top of it, and then maybe if I have a Snapback in my hand, I can play out a Snapback. Like I don't know if Aether Wildfire even has a ton of value in that deck. So
Might not.
I just think that I'm so ready personally to tackle this Icelander deck. For some reason, I just have a real affinity towards it. I feel like it's going to be very good, very skillful to play, and it might be my new main. Unless this Fi deck is just crazy and it doesn't care about Icelander, and if it's an aggro deck that can beat a deck throwing, discard and frostbites and everything in Oldham, then I'll be like, okay, I'm playing this. But if it's gonna struggle against that, then I would definitely like to be on the control deck this format and not on the. I want to
All
take
right,
cards out of people's hands. Don't want to be on
right.
the receiving end of it.
And then for Dromai, all I gotta say is it has dragons.
It has dragons, yeah.
That's it. That's all it's got. I don't know. We're definitely gonna have to work on that deck too because there's quite a few things that I think that the deck can do very well, and I think there's a lot of things that the deck folds to.
Yeah.
So I want to leave it at that for Dromai because I think the deck is still yet to even be like at all figured out. So
Yeah.
we're gonna be the ones to do that too. So
And I just want to say I'm so happy that the game's getting a freshen up where we have 3 new heroes and it's just not the same decks over and over,
and two of the old
tournament to
stuff's
tournament.
out now. So we have two
Yeah.
brand new decks and two old powerhouse decks gone. So like it's a super refresher.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad Chain's gone because like I'm looking at these Icelander cards. I'm like, this man wouldn't have been able to survive in this format. Gosh. But
What you we've got quite a bit of pre-releases coming up this weekend.
yeah,
Kind of excited for them.
I
I
am
know your
too.
brother. You said your brother's going to come with us too.
Oh yeah,
That's actually very exciting. I can't wait to see brother Christian, my brother in Christ.
my brother
Um,
in Christ. Exactly.
um, as we've taken a small break from the game as far as playing. We haven't been playing locals or anything. You're working, so uh, one thing that's kind of got you and I from doing the podcast last week is just our work schedules. We
Yeah,
have like the exact opposite work schedule where I get off at 5 and you go in at 5.
yeah.
so
It's
so
pretty
it's like
wild.
it's like shit. So we're like, you know what? We're just gonna fuck off and take a break. Because we're not bound to the podcast, but it's fun to still record and do whatever. So I'm glad we actually found time to where we were able to record another one. Um,
Yeah.
you know we have RTN season coming up now too. Um, and with our area specifically, what do you think a lot of the players are going to gravitate towards? Do you think, like, if you can single out a couple people from our local area? Because I have a couple of ideas too. But um, do you think people are going to switch to one of the new decks, or do you think that they're going to stay tried and true to their OG, deck they've always been playing? And I'd like
To
to
be on.
start.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think Eric's going to stay playing Oldham.
Yeah,
Quote me. Quote me. I'm going
quote
to
me.
talk shit to him.
Yeah, I think the player base in every area is just gonna have a healthy balance of people trying new things, um, people trying old things, and then of course once the meta settles down, I think when we figure out what the like 3 best decks are, then people are obviously there's gonna be some people, shout out to the Starvo players who are just gonna be like, Boonga Boonga, whatever the next best deck is, let me play. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay if you play Starvo, I ain't mad at you.
No, it's
Um,
not. It's never okay.
but yeah, and I think you're gonna have the people who are the specialists in their class to stay on that. Shout out Josh, who
Shout out Josh.
who gets mad at us every time we don't play Kano and Blitz, but he won't play anything else but Warrior.
I love Josh, bro.
He shits on us. He's like, you should have had
Speed,
Kano in Vegas.
speedy recoveries, Josh. Love you, buddy.
You too.
Uh,
Yep.
oh, that's hilarious. Um, you'll definitely have
Yeah,
these people that just want to play their specific, you know, decks they've always played, like Josh, for example. I know Josh didn't mention that Ninja was his second class he likes a lot, so he might try Fi.
yeah.
And like, good for him. I'm happy that he might be,
And
expanding
then
his horizons.
if there's other interactions that come up now. I'm sure with the new rule, like with the new update and the rules and everything for this new set, there will be like cute little interactions that old decks can do. Like I think Dory with the counters, if she hits allies, it's a guaranteed hit, so you can just stack 12 counters on the Dawnblade guaranteeing the hit until you can eventually just like start going face, so you can
Yeah.
actually beat Dromai, and that's an illusionist that you can have a game plan against if you're playing Dory. So I think people will try out their pet decks, people will gravitate to the new decks, and all around, I'm super excited that the RTNs in our area, Kyle. I wrote it all down today, and I was gonna. But basically, we can go to 6, and we can go to 3 CC and 3 draft, and I think that the fact that they are splitting them up pretty evenly. I know for our area it's like a perfect split, but I'm saying around the globe, the fact that, most people will have the ability to play in a CC and a draft RTN, I think that's awesome
It's pretty
because
neat.
I feel like the draft RTNs, if there's one near you in a couple hour radius, go to it, because if you're
Go to it,
planning on
yes.
going to the Pro Tour, if you're planning on going to, I know there's going to be a draft calling, because they
There's
did it last year. Have two
definitely
draft
going to be that
callings.
at nationals. If you qualify for nationals, you're going to have to do it.
Yeah. So, and I think that it's really hard to get, you know, um, comp level rules drafting done in a local crowd, per
Hmm.
se. Obviously, if you have a group of guys like-minded, like we do in Georgia sometimes, or if you are okay with having fun, it's great. But I think it is good to a couple times just get into the mindset of like, I'm gonna draft like this is a professional event. Keep my eyes straight. Not look in my pile every time. You can save that for your casual draft, but for these drafts, these are good practice for
It's great practice.
all great practice for those comp RELs, because I feel like in the new rules update they said that they were going to start cracking down on that too. No side eyes, none of this. Apparently, IP penalties and the drafting process are going to be a lot easier to be thrown out at you
Yeah.
now.
No
So
hat. I don't think you can have like frontward hats.
yeah, yeah,
And shit like that. So I think that's going to be pretty neat that if they start enforcing a lot of that stuff up. It only takes that one person to get hit with it to
yep,
just make an example. So everybody's like, "Fuck, well, we gotta chill out." So I'm looking forward to just draft, bro. That's just some of the most exciting shit to me. It's being
it
able to
is.
draft, and I came from a couple games where we didn't, and
Yeah,
so being able to actually do that now is pretty freaking awesome.
exactly.
Um, I know you had. Well, I know we were planning on doing roughly about 45 minutes worth of talking, maybe a little less. But with this being a short episode, I know you had something you wanted to go over as far as
Yeah,
negative player mindsets and stuff.
yeah. So actually have a tweet here, and my response was gonna be too long for Twitter. So here, let me pull it up.
Who's the tweet?
It's Tyler Horsepool,
Okay,
and he tweeted a tweet that said, this was about a week ago.
about a week ago. A week ago.
Yeah, shout out Bobby Schmurd. Glad you out of prison, bro. He said, I've been losing a lot more flesh and blood games than usual. It started to affect me mentally, and I'm sure it's made me a little bit more unfun to play against than usual. Gonna try to rest tomorrow and get into the right mindset.
Give
And
me your thoughts.
it was just here. I wrote them down in a little note that basically I was gonna reply to him, but it was too long. So it was just me, and I was gonna say that since my Vegas top eight, I have struggled with, you know, creating the same success since that. And, I've been very open with the team about it. I'm like, I really just wanted to do well in one more event, just to prove to myself that I can put out numbers and things like that, that I'm still a consistent player. And especially at the Pro Tour, not hitting that top 64, going X5, then I was just like, yeah, I thought I was, putting the right amount of time, the right amount of effort into it. And whether it's at the local level, the mid level, like RTNs, ProQuest, or at a calling event, not seeing the results. I was just gonna say one thing that's always helped me is to what Kyle always says: trust the process, and then eventually you'll get there. So that was the whole thing. I just wanted to, speak a little bit about, get your opinions on, like, how do you deal with a negative mindset sometimes? Because whether it's like, I mean, at Indy, like I got 32 damage by Viscerai round one, and that was the present. By the way, not a OTK Viscerai. I'm talking about just like a straight tempo
He
Viscerai,
just
just like,
straight went into you, yeah.
yeah, he straight like turn one Arsenal pass, turn, and then turn two was just like, okay, here's 32 damage at you, bud. And I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
shouldn't be possible.
You
And
know,
that led to a
um,
negative mindset for that whole tournament, and it's kind of hard to come back from that sometimes.
it is. Speaking from experience, I guess on my end, I guess you can relate a negative mindset to pretty much anything you're doing in life, right?
Yeah,
Um, I guess for me, I can speak from experience, or I can speak as far as like a sports player mentality, since I came from sports as a child and as a teenager. It's always going to happen. You're always going to go through what is known as a slump in like baseball or in anything, for example. Like if you think of this, like think about this, and maybe I can put it in terms that everybody understands. Um, in Major League Baseball, you are considered a Hall of Fame player if you're hitting 300, which means you're hitting you hit the ball and get a hit 30% of the time you're at bat. Think about that. 70% of the time you're going to fail. That's just mind-boggling to me to think. If you actually sit there and think about that, you're a 30%. You fail 70% of the time at the plate, and you were considered a Hall of Fame caliber player. Think about that. Like actually think about that, right?
yeah,
So
no, that's
you're
pretty
sitting
wild.
there
Didn't know
and
that.
you're playing this game to do well
On the
30% of the
highest
time.
level, you're playing it at the highest level, being paid multi-$100,000, multi-million-dollar contracts.
To succeed 30% of the time, Sebastian. You know what I mean? Like I can't even put that into words other than that. Like you have in any sport, for example, you're gonna have down times. You're gonna have times where you're not feeling it. You're gonna have times where you're gonna have a slump. There was a guy. Was it this year, last year? I'm always gonna refer to baseball because that's my favorite sport. But he couldn't get a hit. He had a hitting streak of like 18 or 19 games, which is not easy to do. Shout out
Yeah,
to Alex for thinking he can hit a fastball because he can't. We won't get into that either. So, um, he had like 18 or 19 game hit streak, which is insane. And then the one game he when that streak snapped and he was at zero, he struck out like 3 times a night. Didn't get a hit for like 2 weeks. He got benched. And then, he started getting down on himself. And his coaches were like, we're going to send you down to the league lower than this, which is called AAA. We're going to send you on assignment just to get your head right, right? And he goes down, starts slow in AAA, and then gets his first hit. And then he just starts raking. He just starts killing the ball again. And then he comes back up and he's the same person. All he needed was like a reset, for example, right? And looking just 30%, bro. 30%. That's all you have to be in baseball is 30%. So if you take somewhat of a mindset of baseball, whereas any sort of results are good results, then you're going to be fine in this game. I
Yeah,
hope I'm saying that correctly. But you always have to
I
look at
think
the
you
bigger
are.
picture. I think you always have to look at the bigger picture as far as when you're playing card games. You might be playing too much, and maybe that's one of the things that he's struggling with is he might be playing too much or any this goes for anybody. If you're playing too much, turn it down a notch. That's what I did. And granted, I was kind of forced into not playing for a little bit just due to life circumstances, but it's probably necessary. And after Indy, I kind of just took a break, and now I feel so much better, and I feel so ready to play this game again, whether it
Yeah,
just be on like a learning process level. And when Tyler says like he might not be a pleasure to play against, I felt the same way before, actually in Flesh and Blood, where when we transitioned from Blitz into CC. I mean, you could probably tell me. I was having a hard time figuring out CC mentality and how to go about certain things with Classic Constructed when you and I legitimately had some of the best Blitz seasons ever. I feel like
yeah,
so, and I was struggling hard with that. So, um, I get it. I get it. And sometimes you just need to take a deep breath, look at yourself in the mirror, and slap yourself and be like, fucking be better. And sometimes that'll work, and sometimes you just have to take a few days off. Don't go to locals for the next week and just enjoy your time either with your family, your pets, or your friends, and just don't worry about the game. You can still talk about the game and everything, but don't beat yourself up over something very, very minute in the grand scheme of everything.
yeah.
And it's all about legitimately just, in the famous words of my good buddy Hilton, upwards and onwards. Just do the damn thing, and if you start feeling down on yourself or just down in general, just step back for a minute, and just remember that there's people out there that are paid to be 30% perfect. If that makes sense. So
Yeah, I think
that's just me.
another thing to remember is that like when you're comparing yourself, like for me, when you compare myself, like I'm like, how do certain players keep on consistently doing well? What are they doing differently than me? And one advice that my friend told me, and he's like, you just started playing card games competitively. This is to everyone who maybe has played card games for a bit, but you haven't taken it serious yet. He's like fact that you even topped one of your first events that you went to. He's like that's crazy on its own. He's like that usually like take Alex for example, teammate.
Yep.
He's a very good card player, just hasn't had his run of luck yet. And then this weekend, the hard work finally paid off for him. After how many years of playing card games, Kyle? Through
Too many.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic,
Too many since
like
like 2014. I want to say so, like 8 years.
8 years. This man has been playing 8 years, and in a great player had success on I believe like the regional level, PTQs, things like that, right? Regionals at Yu-Gi-Oh! But just
Yeah.
hasn't had that like GP top, that calling top. And then this weekend he finally got it after 8 years. And then I compare myself to that. I'm like, you know what? I've already done something amazing that usually takes some time, and I haven't put 8 years into a card game competitively yet. And the people like Matt Rogers and Tariq Patel and all these great players, they've put years into card games competitively before Flesh and Blood. And
Yeah.
if your first game is Flesh and Blood and you're getting close to that point where you're like, okay, I'm not going negative when I play in a calling, right? I'm making day two, but I'm just not. I'm losing my winning in, or I'm one off from my winning in to get to top eight. Like I was saying, that you always say, Kyle, trust the process. Eventually
Yeah.
you'll get there. You know, I mean, I believed I saw an interview with Matt Rogers, and his track record is crazy. Like, he was talking about how he represented New Zealand in the Magic Nationals like so many times and made
Worlds, I think,
Pro
is what it
Tours,
was, or something like
Worlds.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, Magic, New Zealand and Worlds, and went to the Pro Tour so many times. And then like in this game, it all finally clicked for him. And then now he's, it's hard for him to take an L in this game. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what everyone has to remember. Trust the process and just like keep at it.
Don't be hard on yourself. And I'm mainly talking to
Exactly.
you, but like I'm
I
talking
know.
to everybody too. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, I like as me. It's rich as fuck coming from me, but I'm just that's how I am. I get mad at myself for the little misplay that cost me the game. Shout out to Willie B for teaching me a lot. With that, but just don't be hard on yourself. Like see a lot of shortcomings as a learning experience, and then go from there. And I think once you adopt that the mentality of you know what's the word of learning instead of getting mad at yourself, I think you're gonna see yourself, and this is to you, this is to everybody, this is to me. Like that's gonna help you grow as a player when you sit down. And I'm gonna give a shout out to a buddy of ours from Florida. His name's Chris Ray. Chris, I know you're not listening to this, but but I want you to know how proud I am of you of doing what you did at the Pro Tour, and then obviously being upset with the how it all turned out, and then going back and then winning the Battle Hardened that
Yeah.
happened in Vegas. I think he's kind of sort of a prime example of someone who is very passionate and wants to do well at every event he goes to. He travels to every event he goes to, and he's come short too many times. But then he
Yeah.
finally got that one win. He was undefeated day one at Pro Tour, feeling himself. Like nobody was beating him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
Biggest
and
stick in the
then
room, you know?
yeah, he had the biggest cock in the room at the time. He really did. And like I was so happy for him how well he was doing. But you know, I had a talk with him, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people probably had a talk with him too. But you know, having certain things happen in tournaments you play, and then learning from them, and then going out and then showing people that you've learned from those hard comings or hardships, whatever the word you want to call it, and then come out and then go win the next tournament you play in. As far as like CC is concerned, that's insane. And
It is.
I think that he's a prime example of something that we're talking about here with the trying to overcome your adversities and doing the damn thing. So for sure,
Exactly.
for sure. Um,
Hey, and I mean, like, if you go and with what you were saying, if you go to 20 callings and you top three of them, or even one, I feel like in card games that's pretty damn good. I feel
yeah,
like in
yeah,
card games
for
it's
sure.
actually harder than baseball, probably because you have variance in it.
Yes and no. I mean, I could get into a lot of that, but we won't go there. But at the same time, yes, going to how many events have you gone to as far as like high level events? You went
I
to
think
we went to Vegas, Cincy, Dallas, Nationals, Indy. Is there any more?
Pro Tour,
And then Pro Tour. So yeah, went to 6 tournaments. Okay. Now think
and I
about
guess
this.
Orlando calling counts too, right?
Oh, okay. You went to Nationals and went to that. Okay, cool. So you topped 1 out of 8. So what does that tell you already? You're hitting like what 225, which is not bad at all. I don't know. I don't know what people expect. Like that's insane. Like that's insane rates if you're looking at it from a sports mentality,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of learning you did in that time too, which will only make you a better player. So,
Yep.
um, I think we can leave it off on that because I think that
I
was
think we can.
I
A
think
good
that
last
was
segment right there.
yeah. I think a lot of people can learn from a lot of that. And hopefully you guys did. If you want to leave a comment down in the comment section below, let us kind of know how you deal with adversity, how you deal with being down on yourself, and how you can come, how you've done it before, how you've come out of the dirt and rise like a phoenix. I wanted to do that.
Rise
So, I
like
wanted to do that so bad. But yeah, that's definitely. I'm happy you put that on the topic sheet for today, because I do think that a lot of people need to really look at themselves and kind of figure that out, because when you do that, I think a lot of players are gonna have that little epiphany with themselves where it's gonna work out with them in the end.
yeah.
Um, any final words before we get the hell off?
Um, I mean, if you haven't done a big event yet, and that was the other thing, like we were talking about how I've been to 8 events, right? And in America, there's been what 9 total events since after COVID. There's still plenty of chances for everyone to make their name or do well and just keep going at it. Essentially,
For
we've
sure.
only had we've only had what 9, 10 tournaments.
Yep. That's not a lot, and we got plenty
Not a
more to.
lot.
We got plenty more coming in the horizon. So got nationals coming up and everything. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, guys, if you've stayed with us this long, we fucking
Thank
appreciate
you.
you guys for real. We're on Spotify and we're on YouTube right now. Looking into getting to a couple of other platforms more than likely. I have to have time to do that, so I might look into it after we record this video. That's pretty much it, though. Don't forget to brush your teeth, wash those pits, and wipe your ass. Hopefully, you guys come into your RTN seasons smelling nice and not smelling like fucking shit. And we'll see you guys at the next time. Shout outs to everyone. We love you all. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.
Do man.